Thank you both. According to the 4 area council surveys, Newton residents are most concerned with how our city is managed and how those decisions affect our public schools. They cited issues of curriculum, standards, transportation, labor and budget concerns, but above all, they asked how can we sustain educational excellence. These are engaged Newton voters participating in this election. Let's begin this debate. We have immediately to my right, Christine Fisher. In her biography, Christine Fisher is a finance and operations leader. After 13 years at Procter & Gamble, she co-founded POSIP to strengthen family engagement in schools. A Queen's University graduate, she served on the Cabot Day School Councils and Temple Shalom's board. She's running for Ward 2 School Committee, prioritizing excellence, transparency, and collaboration. And then to Christine's right is Linda Swain. Linda Swain has called Newton home for 20 years, watching her 4th-generation Newtonian children grow up in NPS K-12. Dedicated to excellence in education, she served on Cabot After School Board as president, principal search committee, and as co-president of Newton North High School Boosters. And Ms. Swain has a BA from Tufts and an MBA from Boston College. So we will direct the first question to Ms. Fisher and then to Ms. Swain, and then go back and forth for rebuttals as needed. How are you different from your opponent as it relates to your future actions and goals on the school committee if you're elected?
Thank you. I do just want to check, are we doing opening statements or we're jumping right to questions?
Jumping
Okay, great.
Quick closing statement.
Excellent.
The bios were the standard.
Perfect.
Okay.
Excuse my confusion. So I think there's a few things that differ us, and one is that I'm a parent of 2 Newton public school students. I have a 5th grader and a 7th grader, and so, I am in the schools every day around them doing drop-off and pickup, and at the soccer field, and I hear from parents on a regular basis. I have a vested interest, and we'll see the impact of the decisions that we make as a school committee for the next 10 years. The second is my really deep education experience. I've done a lot of work both professionally and as a volunteer, and I know how the systems work. And with the school committee almost entirely turning over, we need people with that expertise on the school committee.
Linda?
Thank you. I feel I differ from my opponent in a number of different ways. One, I have seen firsthand the successes and challenges at every level of the system, from K through 12. I have lived here for 20 years, and my kids are 4th-generation Newtonians, so I am so committed to the city, I'm not going anywhere. I also have the support of School Committee Chair Chris Bresky and City Council President Mark Laredo and the majority of both those groups. In addition, my opponent early on had expressed that she was in favor of legalizing strikes. She has since changed her tune because I think she realized it was not a popular decision.
May I rebut that? Yes. So there's 2 things on here. One is that I was not given advance notice that the seat would be vacated, and so I only was able to understand that there would be an open seat in this role the 2nd week of June when Chris Bresky announced that he would not be running for re-election. The second is that on my day 2 collecting signatures, someone asked for my opinion on school strikes. I was caught off guard. They did not let me elaborate. That's the only time I've expressed any kind of a position in that way, and it was because I felt as a parent that living through the strike that the fact that it was illegal prolonged it, because they kept waiting for judges to make rulings in between the negotiations, and it really made the strike last longer.
Any rebuttal?
I would just say that what concerns me is that she changed her tune because she realized it wasn't a popular choice. And she also has a treasurer who is actively in favor of the strike and legalizing strikes. Thank you.
So we received from the area council survey respondents an enormous amount of questions related to the 2024 teacher strike as a topic of interest. It is my attempt as a moderator to respect the topics that the area council members would like discussed. At the same time, recognizing neither of you were on the school committee in 2024, and we want to keep this as forward-looking and relevant as possible to help voters understand your actions in the future. So the question is, almost all the current school committee candidates have criticized the various parties' tone and communications during the 2024 teacher strike. The current NTA contract will expire during the next school committee's term. If there is another strike, how should the school committee act differently next time than it did in 2024? Linda, you first, please.
I think a number of ways the school committee can act differently. First of all, I believe that it's important to establish a strong working relationship with the Newton Teachers Association up front. So not when negotiations start, but from from day one. Secondly, tone matters. And during the teachers' strike, there was not open communication between the NTA and the school committee. Finally, the mayor is a member of the school committee and should be present during the negotiations, as it signifies the importance. I've spoken to one of our mayor candidates, Mark Laredo, and he has assured me, if elected, he will be there in the room. Thank you.
Christine.
I do think building relationships is really important, and that's why while I did not seek the endorsement of the NTA, because it's important for me to remain neutral between the parties that we're going to be negotiating with, which is the city as well as the NTA. I've met with their leadership already because I think that it's important to hear from them and understand their positions as we build those relationships moving forward. I do think tone matters, and I think even we can see here that making it really sided of there was good and bad during the strike, that there were people on either sides. These issues are complex and they're difficult and they're very challenging for our community and they're very challenging for parents, teachers, and all those involved. And I think we need to stop attacking each other and move forward as a community to really set ourselves on the best foot to be able to negotiate in good faith.
Okay. Linda, any response?
Nothing further.
Okay. So, Christine, what, in your view, is the proper role of the mayor in his or her capacity as a school committee member?
I think it's really challenging because they have a few roles. One is they're a voting member of the school committee, and the school committee is there in the best interests of all the kids in Newton and all the families in Newton to ensure we have the best schools for our community. But they're also there as the fiduciary responsibility for the city, and that they kind of hold the purse strings for the school district as a whole. So they're not on equal footing with all of the other members, and I think that can be really challenging. I think it's incredibly important that we have independent voices to be able to advocate in the best interest and put our kids first when we're looking forward and working with the city to make sure that we get all the resources that we need to have our schools be as great as they can be.
Linda?
I think the role of the mayor on the school committee is one voting member, just like the rest of us, and it is up to us as school committee members to debate points, argue them appropriately, and if elected, I would certainly use my critical thinking skills to make decisions that are in the best interest of our kids. And I agree with Christine, we need to be independent from the mayor, but at the same time, we need to establish a great working relationship.
Okay.
That's it.
Continuing on the theme of working with the mayor, both of you in public statements, as well as most of the other candidates, have prioritized transparency and communication with the community about budgeting. Chris Bresky, the current school committee chair, has also made NPS budget transparency a priority, and he has publicly said that he believes the true NPS baseline budget allocation should be $296 million, which in his view reflects its full costs, as opposed to the current $292 million, which is a lower amount, but then supplemented with one-time funds and free cash funds by the mayor. The potential trade-off of going to the $296 million is that it may give the mayor lower flexibility to manage the city's year-over-year funding allocations and potentially put its AAA bond rating in jeopardy, which relies on various accounting ratios. So is transparency or is flexibility in collaborating with the mayor's office more important? Linda?
Can you just restate the end part of the question? You don't have to read the whole one again.
If transparency, meaning a higher budget allocation, then commits for a multi-year period the city to fund more to NPS, which reduces its flexibility and therefore might be opposite the mayoral goals, how would you think about those trade-offs?
Between transparency and what's the other trade-off?
And working with the mayor, who will prioritize the overall city's financial flexibility and financial ratios to bond agencies.
So it's really important that we are expressing transparency relative to the school budget, and I think that Superintendent Nolan and Chair Chris Bresky did a terrific job in the spring, and I would advocate that we continue to do measures like that. In terms of the actual budget, I believe that we need a budget that enables our schools to thrive, and but not put, it all has to work within the context of the needs of the city. And that always needs to be a very, very careful balance. Don't pretend that it's easy.
Christine?
Yeah, I generally think that we can accomplish both of having transparency as well as some budget flexibility. I think overall we need to be able to increase the level of understanding within our community about how our schools are funded and what the challenges are related to those. It's extremely complex how our schools are funded right now. Even your opening statement and the question of free cash flow and bond ratings, the vast majority of people have no or little to no idea how that all works. And I think that it's really important for us to work as a school district to help the community understand what the financial needs are of our schools. And our role is to advocate for the best interest of our kids and what our schools need to be able to do that. Sometimes that's going to mean using flexibility with the city's budget, and sometimes that's going to mean increasing the overall budget.
A follow-up. Following the past spring's budget season and a lot of communication and presentations and statements, you just said that improving communication would be a priority. What should be done differently or in addition than now? And then the same question to you, Linda, shortly.
Yeah, this is an issue that I'm really passionate about and have been talking a lot on the campaign trail about. One thing we did in a previous district that I lived in was had monthly town halls with the school district's finance leader, and that it's not just in a crisis that we're communicating. I think that that was challenging during the strike. I think that was challenging during the budget discussion this past spring. If we're only communicating in sort of rushed times where emotions are high and we have limited time, we're not able to have the same discussions and level of information sharing that we can if we're doing it on a routine basis. These issues are complex and we need to be engaging continuously. Engagement is not a one-time thing. It's an everyday thing where we need to be making sure that our community has the information they need about how our schools are run.
Okay. Linda, that was technically a follow-up to Christine's statement that communication around financial matters has been overly complex. Do you have anything to add on that topic? Or rebuttal to what Christine just said?
No, I would agree that we need to level set and enable our entire city to understand exactly where we are at from a city perspective, as well as where we're at from a school budget perspective, so one can kind of personally weigh the pros and cons in context.
Okay. Continuing on the topic of communication with the community, this question I think is Christine first. Recently, four current school committee members signed an open letter disagreeing with statements made by an NPS parent who was also running for city council. Many of these same committee members have in the past expressed frustration with what they had called social media rumors and communication confusion. What is the role, if any, of social media in the school committee's communication with the community?
Yeah, I'll first address the specific issue. I am very concerned about the comments that were made by a candidate who is running for city council as well. And to me, those weren't rumors because they were in his own words on a social media group. And so I think it was really well warranted for current school committee members to make comments about that. Social media can be a really great tool. And I think, like most technology, we need to be teaching our kids and showing the community how we can be leaders in this and use it appropriately. It's the same with how we have dialogue in person. It's the same with how we have dialogue on social media. We need to stop this sided discussions, polarization, and we need to be able to demonstrate and be proud to show our kids this is how we have tough discussions in our community. That can be done online, that can be done in person. But if we ignore the main communication vehicle that's out there today, we're really going to be missing a big chunk of the community.
Linda?
What I would like to add is that I think actually social media can play a very important role for the school committee and be a terrific form of communication to the broader community. I would add that I would not use it in isolation. I would also leverage traditional vehicles like email, like in-person meetings. I think the Chris Bresky, Anna Nolan meeting in the spring was a great example, and I would do that on a quarterly basis. But social media should definitely be one vehicle of communication that the school committee uses to get the word out.
Going back to combining the last two questions, communication and budget, the large variables affecting the NPS budget have been widely discussed: rising costs, correcting poor decisions under prior leadership, and high community expectations for NPS. As a school committee member, how will you help convince skeptical voters that city budget allocations to NPS should increase at a higher rate? Linda, you first.
Sure. So I think this goes back to the transparency. Every member of the NPS community and the broader Newton community needs to understand exactly where their tax dollars are going, including within NPS. So we need to set a baseline and agree upon what that baseline is so that there is transparent communication by all. I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of your question.
How would you help convince, in your capacity as a possible school committee member, communicate to skeptical voters why NPS needs an increased budget allocation at a higher rate than currently?
So I think if we set the baseline and everybody agrees to it, then we need to explain what are the challenges. We have a declining enrollment, however, greater needs amongst our students, which is causing the need for more paraprofessionals, which ups our costs. And all of that needs to be communicated clearly and in the context of the entire NPS budget.
Christine?
Similar to my previous answer, communication and engagement starts from day one and not from the beginning of an override campaign. We need to really start communicating on a regular and routine basis to all members of the Newton community, not just parents, not just those involved, but our senior community. Really get out there, and not just the people who show up or are unable to show up to, an 8:30 in the morning on a Thursday communication from the school committee. So it starts with engagement, it starts with communication on a routine basis, and that baseline knowledge that we need to express what our needs are and why our needs are so increasing. When you have things like benefits, which is a large portion of the school district's budget, going up 11% a year, we're not going to be able to continue to fund our schools on an ongoing basis with the current allocation that we have.
Going to the topic of curriculum, in a recent Newton Teachers Association bulletin to its members, NTA President Mike Zillis quoted an elementary educator as saying, "I have to reconcile myself to the fact that Newton is no longer a place where we teach students, but rather one where we teach curriculum." Do you agree or disagree with this statement, and why? Christine?
I'll start by reinforcing that curriculum is not within the scope of the school committee as a whole, that we do have oversight of the superintendent who implements curriculum. We have oversight of the budget, but I do think that distinction is really important. I think that we really need to work towards standardization of our curriculum across the schools. We have very different experiences right now, in particular at the elementary school level, between what our students experience, whether you're going to one school or another, and that's not okay for our community. We need to know that as kids come through Newton Public Schools, they have a similar experience. I do think there's room in there for teachers to put their own input on that curriculum, and we need to have a balance of standardized curriculum with what makes our schools so special, and that's our teachers knowing our kids and being able to adapt that curriculum to their classroom.
Linda?
I would echo Christine's comments about the role of the school committee relative to curriculum, but specific to the question, I would disagree with the question. I think curriculum is very important, and it enables us as parents to understand if my child is taking a math class and his friend is taking a similar math class with the same teachers, with a different teacher at the end of the year, they're walking out with the same information. So a standardized curriculum enables that to happen. And along with it, we need assessments so we understand exactly how we're doing.
Okay. The MCAS has recently been removed as a statewide graduation requirement. Should Newton instill a local version of a district-wide common assessment test as a graduation requirement? Linda?
So, it is so important that we assess our students, because if we don't, how do we know how they're doing? And as a school committee, that is really important. So whether or not it is MCAS or it is another assessment, we need to have an assessment in place. Relative to graduation requirements, that ship has sailed, and so we no longer have that as a graduation requirement.
I have a quick follow-up to what
Sure.
you just said, but first, Christine, if you'd like to respond to the question.
Do you want to follow up
No,
first?
go ahead.
Okay. To answer directly, I don't believe that we should have a local MCAS graduation requirement. While the state law did pass that it is no longer required by the state, local communities could make that decision. While I think MCAS is very important as a tool for oversight and understanding how our schools in general are doing across the state, I think that having holistic graduation requirements that encompass the entire works of our students are really important versus a high-stakes one-day test. As a parent of some kids with some special needs, I know just how challenging those types of tests and assessments can be. I'm very in favor of Superintendent Nolan's desire to bring more assessments to our district, especially as tools for improving learning outcomes for our kids. When we wait till the end of the year and one day to test and we get the results months later, that doesn't impact our kids' education. When we can be using assessments on a routine basis with our teachers to really improve and tailor the educational outcomes for our kids, that's where assessments can be very valuable for our community.
So to summarize your answer, you are supportive of ongoing assessments, but not as a graduation requirement?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Linda, and Christine mentioned it, the local districts do have the ability to
Yes.
put in graduation requirements.
Right.
Wanted to clarify, when you said that ship has sailed, it has not necessarily sailed for Newton. Did you have any follow-up on your thoughts of what should or shouldn't be a requirement?
Well, I would like to see a much more well-rounded assessment. It would be terrific if it had some of the elements of the portrait of a learner that the superintendent and MPS has rolled out. I think that would offer our families and our students a greater picture on essentially where they stand as a student.
Going back to you, Linda, NPS enrollment has not recovered from an approximate 6% decline during COVID. Should increasing enrollment be a goal of the school committee? And if so, how would you assist this effort?
Yes, I think declining enrollment should be a role within the school committee. I do believe every family makes a very personal choice on whether or not they send their child to private school, and the choice may be, for a multitude of different reasons. But I feel strongly that no family should ever have to make a choice of sending their kids to private school because they don't feel their kids are getting a quality education. I think as we begin to improve and roll out programs such as the new Math Pathways program, we can communicate what we're doing and the success of what we're doing, as well as begin to have universal pre-K, which would get more students involved in our schools earlier, which would ultimately help with enrollment.
I think when we're talking about enrollment, it's really important to understand the drivers. We did lose a lot of families during COVID, but that trend of families currently enrolled in our school districts leaving en masse has not continued. And in fact, the percentage of Newton students who are attending Newton schools has increased over the last several years. Our enrollment decline is largely driven by demographic impacts of smaller birth rates impacting our kindergarten classes being smaller than our graduating classes. I really think it's important that we understand the data driving the outcomes within our district to be able to focus on how we solve those problems. Improving our academic rigor, making sure that families understand what we're doing and improving our curriculum is important. But if the reason for our enrollment decline is low birth rates, we have to solve that in a different way. And I've communicated before that I think expanding preschool access, which I've led initiatives like that in the past, would be a really great opportunity for us to bridge some of that enrollment decline.
A follow-up to you both who mentioned universal preschool. In the current budget environment, which has national, state, macroeconomic pressures on it, when just funding the existing services is so challenging, what's your financial context for advocating for universal preschool? Christine first, and then Linda.
Sure. I think that we need to look at a holistic picture, and getting our enrollment up overall the years is going to be really important, as well as utilizing the assets that we have. When we have some buildings that are not as utilized, have lower enrollment than others, that filling that space is important. From a budget standpoint, preschool can also be a combination of paid and funded. And so, in most communities where there is a universal preschool element, there is an income component of it as well in terms of opportunity to charge tuition for that. I think that it also is a fairly popular idea, one that a lot of families in the community supports, that's very research-based on the impact that it can have on later academic outcomes. And so it is possible that you can go back to the community for dollars specifically to that. And that's what I helped lead in the city of Cincinnati, was a citywide override to support the expansion of preschool access.
And by income component, to verify, you mean people with lower incomes don't pay as much?
Yes.
Thank you. Linda, same question. Financial context of your advocating for universal preschool?
So I would absolutely love to have universal preschool. I think the reality of that in the next 2 years is probably not strong, but I believe that we can make steps in that direction, and one creative idea I have is to really expand the fundraising efforts that we do within the city of Newton. I had a woman come up to me 2 weeks ago saying she would be willing to donate $20,000 on the spot to Newton Public Schools, and I think we can expand upon the Newton Schools Foundation or similar. There are cities and towns across the country that are funding over $1 million a year in programs, and if we could leverage similar approaches in our city, I think we can get to universal pre-K at no cost.
Anything further?
I would follow up on, because it relates to something that Linda has shared previously. I believe it was in the Beacon questionnaire about bringing private dollars into our school district. I think fundraising efforts are reasonable, but I would have concerns about when we start working with corporations or other private funders into our public schools, and that to me was a pretty concerning statement.
What is the specific concern? For background, you have both educational business experience. So what would be a concern about what you thought was your opponent's suggestion?
I think when we start to talk about private dollars, if that means corporations into our public schools, that there could be undue influence of what our kids are learning, what, even marketing in the building. You're right. I worked at one of the largest companies, Procter & Gamble, and, I would not necessarily want us to have branding from companies within our buildings and the exposure that has to our young minds.
Linda, any response on your statements around using private dollars as part of the budget mix?
Sure. I believe we can actually get very creative with our budget dollars, and I would support having, say, a field sponsored by a local business. I think we are at a point where it is really difficult from a budgetary standpoint, and getting creative in doing things like that could really offset some of the challenges that we have. There certainly would need to be appropriate protocols in place so that inappropriate businesses didn't have the ability to do so, and there would be a vetting process, but I think we can get very creative.
One more question and then brief closing statements. Going back to Christine, how do you analyze the trade-offs and prioritizing the importance of local walkable elementary schools with the higher costs of staffing and maintaining those buildings?
Yeah, I love our walkable elementary schools. My kids both bike to school right now. We've enjoyed in previous years walking as a family to schools, and I think that it helps build community. There's also a really important health element to kids starting their day with fresh air and a little bit of exercise before they go into a classroom. So I really believe in our local school communities. I think that back to the enrollment question, we have to look at how do we keep our schools open with those that are a little bit underutilized right now? And I think that adding some preschool classes could be an opportunity to do that. We really have to make sure that we're also, again, understanding the data and the drivers and the demographic shifts so that we're not making long-term decisions of shutting a school or selling a school building for short-term demographic shifts, and making sure that we truly bring experts into that space so that we make those decisions holistically.
Linda, same question.
So I believe strongly in neighborhood schools, and walking my kids to Cabot was like a rite of passage. It meant so much to me, and I know it means so much to so many families out there. to strike that right balance as we look at future schools, I think what is key is that we're looking at a wide set of data. It's not simply enrollment, it's not simply financial, but what are the impacts? What are the walk times? How does this impact programs? How does it impact teachers? Do teachers have colleagues that they can, brainstorm with? And so for me, it's all about looking at a wide set of data in terms of making the decision when we're looking at, two schools versus one school in a particular area.
Thank you. And we directed the first question to start to Linda, to Christine. So Linda, if you'd like to make a brief closing statement, please go ahead.
Sure. So what I would like to say is my goal, if elected, is to bring back the excellence in education that so many of us, including me, moved to this city for. I support the superintendent's vision, and a large part of that is using data to make decisions and measuring student outcomes. I have seen firsthand the successes and challenges at every level from K through 12. And I'm proud of what I've seen, but I also believe there's an opportunity for us to do better. As I had said earlier, I'm supported by School Committee Chair Chris Bresky and City Council President Mark Laredo and the majority of both those groups.
A few more seconds.
I like to keep it simple and say, if elected, every decision that I make will be based on what's in the best interest of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine?
Thank you for being here today and watching online. As a parent of 2 children in Newton Public Schools, I see every day the incredible impact and strengths of our community, and also see the places where we can be doing better. I'm running because I want all our kids to have opportunities to learn and thrive. I bring a fresh and independent perspective and voice to the school committee. I am truly the independent voice in this race. I listen, I ask tough questions, and I'm able to learn from the community and learn from the people who I'm listening to. I also bring a really deep breadth of experience in education, both professionally and as a volunteer. With an almost entire turnover of the school committee, I think it's critically important that we bring people with experience into those seats to be able to navigate the challenges that our school district is going to face over the next years. I've dedicated myself to this area and improving outcomes for kids in whatever ways I can. I left my corporate job to do that in 2018 because this is the area that I'm really passionate about. My family chose this community when we moved here for the schools and to be part of this wonderful Newton community. I've dedicated myself to improving that community since the day we moved here and will continue to do so moving forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both.
Thank you.